Have you ever questioned if a guy was truly right for you? Aren't you tired of spending time with men who you still aren't completely sure about? What if I told you with the right checklist, you can be absolutely sure that the guy you're spending your time and energy on is actually the guy you need in your life? Which is why on today's show, we're going to be discussing how to know he's the one. That way, you can be absolutely sure that the way you feel about this guy and around this guy is how you should be feeling if he's truly the love of your life. Point number one is about the mask. When you first meet a guy, I want you to be thinking about and perceiving within yourself, do I feel like I can be the real version of myself around this guy? Or do I feel like I have to put on or keep my already existing mask? Now, some of you are gonna ask the very important question, what exactly is a mask, Thompson? You know, when you go out into work and you present yourself a particular way, a way that you'll talk, you'll have a work voice, you'll have a work persona. You might even be a lot more, I guess we can say, preppy and upbeat than your regular self. There's so many different things in the way that your character will be when you're being this kind of fake version of yourself, or whatever the case may be, whether it be because you're at work, whether it just be because you're around coworkers or around people you're uncomfortable with. You generally have a mask a lot of the times that you'll put on around other people. The outside world will have their own particular perception of who you are. Now, here's the very important thing to note, because if we're talking about a guy being the one for you, the guy being Mr. Right, or the guy that you should be with in a relationship with, we want to make sure that around him, you don't feel the pressure to continuously keep up with this mask. If you feel like you have to be this person with him all the time, you'll be exhausted in the relationship because you'll never feel like you can be your authentic true self. You'll never feel like you can express your authentic true feelings. And subsequently, all the time that you spend with him will feel a lot like a job. So what does the real version of you mean? It means true feelings. True feelings in the sense of being able to feel like, hey, when I tell this person something about myself or how I feel, I actually feel safe enough to tell him about this, that he's not just going to throw it back in my face or invalidate my feelings. Now, let me warn you of something that I want you to understand for the entire show. None of what I'm talking about here when I'm saying how to figure out if he's the one is about meeting a guy on the very first date and in the very first 5 minutes of the date, sitting down and expecting to have this answer right away. That's not how it's going to work, okay? You know me, we don't do microwave stuff. We do slow roasting. So what I mean by that is none of this is going to be possible to determine in the first 5 minutes of a date. It's going to come over the course of time where you'll realize I can actually express my true feelings with this guy, and I'm actually safe here that even when I do, they won't be invalidated. Now, the other thing here when it comes to real is in your expression. Now, what do I mean by in your expression? We all have a slightly weird side, even me, okay? I know I come on this board, but I get very weird a lot of the time. I want you to understand something that's important in a long-term serious relationship, especially if we're talking about the guy that's going to be the one for you. You need to feel authentic in your expression, in all the different sides of your character, whether it be your weird side, whether it be your freaky side, whether it be your curious side, whatever side that you have. And in the way that you express yourself, that should feel authentic to you. If you find yourself on a regular basis feeling like, oh, I would love to express myself this way, or I would love to be this weird, quirky personality that I know is within me, but every time I think of doing that thing or saying that action, I'm going to hold myself back because I don't want to necessarily express those sides of myself to this person. If on an ongoing basis you feel constricted or you feel like you need to suppress these weird or strange sides of you around that guy, then he's definitely not the one. Because what should be happening is you feel like your authentic expression is the expression that you're allowed to exist in around this guy. Now, the other thing here that we should discuss is, we'll say, romance. Now, the reason I'm saying romance in terms of figuring out if he's the one and this part of being the mask is because what can happen a lot of the time, see, you're a woman. And in your womanhood, you start to hear a lot of things about how you should react and respond when it comes to romance. And you hear about please him this way, two-hand twist, gluck gluck 3000. And it sounds great. Yeah, we want you to be great at that. But we also want to understand part of romance is not just his pleasure, it's also your pleasure as well. So when you're thinking about if a guy is the one or not, do you feel like you can be authentic in your expression of also your pleasure? And in also your version of romance. Because if you feel like you need to suppress that side of yourself or suppress your needs or suppress your desires because you feel like he might judge you or because you feel like he might think you're weird once again in your expression of what you need or what you want, what you find interesting or what turns you on, once again, we're in the wrong place. Because this is all part of putting on the mask around people that you don't want to necessarily get too close to you and know too much about you, but we don't want that to be the guy that you're trying to date. We want to make sure that the guy you're trying to date and the guy that you end up with, you feel like you can be authentic in your expression around him. Point number 2 is about doing nothing. Now, I'm not referring to the doing nothing that we talk about, what you should be doing in attracting men. This version of doing nothing is about in your relationship with him. In order to determine if he's the one, we want to realize, is it comfortable or uncomfortable to be doing nothing with him? When you're with a guy, what I want you to understand is you're going to go through many different experiences with this guy, in many different environments with this guy. When you start off dating a guy, usually what's going to happen is your first date's going to be at a coffee shop or a restaurant or at Nobu if you're dating a really rich man. And here's the thing. When you go to these restaurants or you go to these coffee shops, there's things happening, there's music playing, there's people around, other people might come up to you and ask you questions, you've got drinks, you've got food, you've got coffee, you've got whatever you've got. Meaning all of these things are coming at you, your senses, your ears, your smell, your sight, everything is happening at once as you're in conversation with this person. This can make meeting someone a lot easier. You don't even realize it. Because as you're meeting this person, all of these other things happening around you are also slightly taking up a little bit of your attention. But what happens eventually as you continue to date someone and see them is there stops always being stimulus, I should say, around both of you in order to take your attention or captivate your attention at different moments. But the problem is, at some point when there's no longer any stimulus, you have to ask yourself a question. How do we feel about each other? Okay? Because here's something that can happen, and you might only realize this down the road. When you two are just doing nothing, you can start to feel very, very uncomfortable in this mode around him. Because you're like, oh, we're doing nothing. Like, what are we now? Like, I don't know if I like you anymore. I don't know if I like this vibe. This is very uninteresting to me. This is very unsettling to me. Why do I feel like this? Please say something. Please do something. Let's go somewhere. And this can be a very weird feeling to have because you're thinking to yourself, why do I feel so unsettled in just silence around this person? What that's really speaking to you is your spirit is unsettled with that human being. And also there can be an element of you feeling unsafe around that person, which we'll get to later on in the show, where your spirit is actually telling you, hey, I actually don't like being around this person. I feel very uncomfortable with this person, that when there is no stimulus going on to distract me from my discomfort, I actually am able to realize then that something is off here. If you feel like the only time you feel comfort around a man is when there's all of this different stimulus going on around the two of you, that's a problem. Because if you need stimulus in order to feel comfortable around that guy, he's not your guy. A relationship is never going to be able to survive if you constantly need all of these different external factors to feel happy or to feel fulfilled or satisfied in the relationship. I'm literally talking about the ability to just sit down with this man, look at him, be with him, chat with him without music playing in the background, without going out to a large restaurant, without a whole bunch of lights, even without food, for you to just be able to exist with him and that to be fulfilling to you. Of course, we want him to do things for you, but we also want you to feel like, I still like the guy, I still feel good around the guy, and I still love the relationship even if we're not necessarily doing anything special. Feeling like your partner is someone who you would love to be trapped on an island with is the best feeling in the world, because then you never feel the pressure to be anywhere or do anything in order to feel happiness in your relationship. Remember, when we're talking about knowing if he's the one, we're not just talking about knowing if he's the one for the first couple of months. We're not just talking about knowing if he's the one for you to, flash him off to your friends that he's doing things for you. We're talking about knowing if he's the one for the rest of your life. And the rest of your life is going to consist of high highs with lots of things to do, but it's also going to consist of many mundane and boring activities, some days not much even going on. So we want to ensure that the way you feel around this guy is good either way. Point number 3 is about the first tell. See, it's easy to trauma dump on people because it's natural to just say, hey, I want to get something off my chest, so whoever wants to listen to me, I'll get it off my chest. But in the opposite sense, I want you to think within yourself and observe this within your own spirit and your own mind. When something good comes to you in life, whether it be money, whether it be a promotion, a breakthrough in your realizations or in your spiritual life, whatever it may be good that is coming to you, I want you to ask yourself a very important question. Who is the first person I want to tell? Because what should be happening is, if this guy is truly the one for you, this guy should be the first person you feel excited and ecstatic to tell about something good happening into your life. It's very subtle, but what's also happening here is that this person is also a source of happiness to you. And so the expression of something good happening to your life is like, oh my gosh, I'm excited, and I want to bring this excitement to you because I want you to share in my excitement. You almost feel like this person is a part of you, right? This person is a part of your happiness. And subconsciously, you also have an understanding that this person, when they hear about something good happening to you, they will also be happy as well. It's almost like, in a very weird way, you're kind of sharing the emotion here. Because as you feel good and as you feel happy and you share that with someone who also makes you happy, they're also in turn happy for you because this good thing is happening to you. It's very interesting. Now, in the opposite sense, you might be thinking, well, actually, I'm in the complete opposite scenario where whenever something good happens in my life, I'm actually very shy to tell this guy because he tends to either put me down or to just kind of feel uncomfortable when he sees something good happening in my life. The other day, I was at a restaurant and the waiter was trauma dumping. I ask a lot of questions, so the waiter started trauma dumping. It's fine. And so when the waiter was trauma dumping, she was telling me about how essentially in her last situation, she was with a narcissist, and this narcissist that she was with, essentially, whenever she would hang out with friends or tell him about the good things that are happening in his life, he would literally have discomfort on his face. Oh, yeah, you're going out with the girl. It was a good time. Oh, interesting. Yeah, nice. You're going out with girlfriends to have a good time. Oh, okay, whatever. Right? And physically, he would actually express discomfort whenever she would tell him something good happening to her in her life. Some of you might actually be in a situation like that, whether it be with a boyfriend or whether it will be with a guy you're talking to, where you actually kind of feel a little bit of discomfort when telling this guy about something good happening in your life because you know it will make him uncomfortable. Even though it sounds kind of counterintuitive that someone you care about would be uncomfortable with good happening to you, it does happen. So I want you to recognize that within yourself and within your relationship or situationship with the guy to answer the question for yourself, is this guy the one? Point number 4 is the mirror. One of the most important questions to ask yourself whenever you're dating a guy is, do I actually like the person who I am when I'm around that guy? Have any of you ever heard the saying, or have heard someone say to you, I love who I am when I'm around you? Whether it be a friend, a family member, a best friend, a boyfriend, whoever, right? Have you ever said that before or heard that said to you? I love who I am when I'm around you. That saying is exactly what this is pertaining to. When you spend time with a man, especially when you spend extended amounts of time with a man, I want you to ask yourself, do I actually like the person I become when I'm spending a lot of time around him? Do I feel like I represent who I even want to be? Or does the person I become when I'm around him actually very ugly to me? Let's say you're in a really toxic relationship. You are doing a lot of things like responding to his crazy by going crazy yourself. So you're crazy. You yell, you curse, you break things. And in all of this action, let's say instead of you being happy with what you see in the mirror in being around this guy, when you look back on your actions, you actually see someone very, very, very disgusting, because this toxic relationship that you're in brings out all of these horrible and nasty qualities about you. So whenever you look in the mirror at yourself, when you're around this guy, you feel very icky about yourself, even in this relationship, because you know how low you stoop whenever you get around this guy, whenever you're with him or spend a lot of time around him, because of the dynamic of your relationship. He's pulling out of you these horrible and the worst qualities that you possess and bringing them to the forefront. In the opposite sense, you can be with someone who in your relationship with them, let's say he's a hard worker, and let's say he really loves to go to the gym every day. So he motivates you to go to the gym more, and he motivates you to count your steps every day, and he motivates you to take your health more seriously. Let's say he also has a business, and he motivates you to get your money together, and he motivates you to think about what you want for your future. And so when you're around him, you start thinking about all of these different ways in which you can positively impact your own life and make your own life better. And so when you end up doing that in the opposite sense, instead of all of these negative character traits happening when you're around him, you have a bunch of positive traits exuding through you. And instead of him pulling all of the worst qualities of you out and bringing them to the forefront, he pulls all the best qualities out from you and brings them to the forefront, that by the time you look in the mirror, instead of seeing an image that you're disgusted with, you see an image of yourself that you're actually really proud of. And when you look back at the person you've been, when you're spending that time with him, you're like, oh my God, I actually turned into a better version of myself around this guy. I'm more nurturing now. I'm more feminine now. I'm more in my element now. I feel even closer to my authentic self now being around this guy versus before when I wasn't around him. It's a perfect example of this guy being the actual one for you, because you want your relationship to be with a person that brings to the forefront all of the amazing feminine qualities that you possess, not in the opposite sense where he's bringing out masculine qualities within you or bringing out a toxic side of you that you don't enjoy seeing in the mirror. Point number 5 is about the future. When a guy is the one for you, one of the most important things to take realization and take notice of, how easy is it for both of you to discuss the future as if it's already happening, as if both of you are already sure of the role you will play in each other's lives. I know I talked to you guys about guys discussing the future with you, but also ask yourself a really important question. When I think about the future, when I discuss the future, is it easy for me to imagine him as he currently is in my future? See, something very interesting can happen in your relationships. You might be in a situation where the relationship that you have with a man is so toxic that you actually enjoy living in the present, not because, I just want to be present and I just want to feel good right now. It's because you know that the future is most likely never going to work out. And because you know deep down in your soul and your spirit that the future with this guy is not going to work out, you'd rather not think about that too much and rather just stay here in the present and say, hey, today you're going to penetrate yourself inside of me. We're going to feel good for the moment, and we're not going to think too far down in the future because we don't know what we're going to be. We don't know if we're going to be together. We don't know how things are going to go. We have no idea about anything. So let's just stay here in the present, not care about what's coming for the future. Let's not talk about it. Let's not address it. Let's just enjoy life for what it is right now. Some of you who are in a friends with benefits situation probably adopt that same mindset. Let's not think too hard about tomorrow or next week or next year. Let's just be in the moment. Sounds good in a movie script, but in reality, it doesn't actually help you get to where you want to go. And it's a very clear sign that this guy is not the one for you, because the idea of the future, even for you as a woman, should become very comfortable for you to think about, for you to discuss, and for you to feel in your heart. One of the things to realize too, you could be dating a man who you don't even in your own heart consider to be husband material. Why could that be happening? Because you're going about your dating life how you feel in the moment or whatever is convenient for you in the moment. But when you're actually thinking about what it would be like to build a future with that same guy, with those same character traits, you're honest with yourself in saying, he's not that guy for me. He's not going to be that guy in my life. He doesn't have those character traits. He doesn't have those personality traits. He's just not him. But I'm still here living in the present because that's what feels good right now. Very grave mistake, and also a very clear sign that this guy is not the one for you. Point number 6 is jobs. Let's imagine a scenario so that I can explain to you why this is important to realize if you want to know if a man is the one for you. Let's imagine you and a guy have to get dinner done in 30 minutes. You're really hungry, really starving. It's the end of the day and you need to get this done. You're both on a crunch period. Now, in order to get dinner done fast and efficiently, both of you have to adopt your own particular jobs in terms of getting the dinner done. He's on the prep side, which means he's got to slice, organize. He's got to set up all of the ingredients, all of the different vegetables and fruits that you guys are going to be using in this meal, all of the spices, lay everything out for what they need to be, all the materials that need to be organized in order to do this job. You're going to do all of the frying. You're going to do all of the, obviously, cooking, the boiling. I guess we can say, baking, if that's even required. The reason I'm giving this example is in a situation and scenario like this, where both of you are preparing a dinner and both of you have your own separate jobs in order to do this properly. Both of you have to be doing your job properly in order to accomplish this goal. What can't happen though is if you're the cook that's supposed to be making sure everything is fried at the right temperature. So as he's slicing and organizing, you're setting up the fryer, making sure there's enough oil, there's the right kind of oil, making sure things are the right temperature to be cooked or boiled or baked, making sure all the stove is clear, making sure you have the right pots and pans and materials to use. You have your own particular role. But what will happen is if you're in a scenario in which you don't feel like his skills in terms of meal prep are good enough, you're going to start looking at what he's doing and saying, oh, you're supposed to be slicing those vegetables smaller than that. Maybe I should come in and start slicing the vegetables for you because you're not slicing them at the right size. Oh, you're supposed to be setting up this thing this way. So if you can't do that properly, let me come in and let me start organizing this how I think it should be for the setup when I start cooking. Here's the problem though. You're supposed to get dinner done in 30 minutes. If you start doing his job, what does that mean you can't do? You can't do your own job. And so the more and more you start doing his job because you don't feel like you can trust him to do his job, you slow down this process, right? And you have a lot less of an efficient I guess we can say outcome here, because instead of you guys getting dinner done in 30 minutes, maybe it takes you 2 hours, because not only are you doing your job, but you're also doing his job because you don't trust him to do it. And then you go back and do your job. And then he just stands there like, what am I supposed to do? I don't know what to do because you won't let me do anything. And then even when you start doing your job, you start feeling resentment towards him because you just finished doing his job. And now you're also doing your job as well. So you're like doing double the work. Why do I give you this analogy here? And why do I want to point this out to you as it relates to him being the one? Because when he is the one, you won't feel like you need to do his job. You won't feel inclined to. You won't feel compelled to do his job. You won't feel like it's necessary to do his job because you'll feel like he's already doing that. So how does this apply to relationships? In the feminine, which you should be in, and in the masculine, which you should be in, you should feel like he can take on the roles that a masculine man should be taking on. And you shouldn't feel like it's necessary for you to take on his roles because he already has those things covered. If you're in a relationship where you feel like, if I don't go about the business of reserving the table at the place that we said we're going to go for a dinner date and making sure we're on time and making sure that we're both scheduled and ready to show up at that place when we're supposed to show up and that our reservation will be there and be ready for us to eat at that restaurant. And you feel like you have to take on all of that responsibility in order to actually show up and have a nice meal at a nice restaurant, you're in the wrong relationship with the wrong man, because you feel like he's incapable of doing his job to the point where you feel like you are needing and compelled to do his job for him, that you don't even feel like you can trust him to do his job. So once again, just like in our analogy, you end up doing his job, then you end up doing your job. But in this scenario, when it comes to masculine and feminine, the longer you end up doing his job and existing in your masculine just to exist in this relationship, the longer you end up being and staying in your masculine in this relationship. And a lot of times you'll never revert back to your feminine. A lot of times what will happen is instead you guys will start to flip-flop positions. As you take on more of a masculine role and start doing more of his job, he'll take on more of a feminine role, sitting back and relaxing and receiving, not saying or doing anything, and just letting you do all the leading. We don't want that. So in order to know if he's the one, you have to ask yourself a very important question. Do I feel compelled to do his job? Because I don't trust him to be able to do his job as a masculine man. If within my spirit and my soul, I feel compelled to do his job because I don't think he's capable of doing it, I'm in the wrong relationship. So point number 7 is about safety. Now, what am I referring to when I'm talking about safety? Am I talking about him fighting guys to the death for you? No. What I'm discussing is the element of safety you will feel in a man's presence. This is something I want you to pay very, very, very close attention to about yourself and about your spirit. What should be happening is when you get with a guy, you should start, as time goes on, feeling more and more safe with him. What safety elements am I talking about? Let's go first into the unsafe category to kind of describe what I mean about safety. If you feel like around this guy, you are not protected from the standpoint of, hey, if I'm with him, I don't necessarily feel like I'm protected by anything. In fact, if anything, I'm probably in a more dangerous situation because he can't even control or handle himself. So I definitely know he's not going to be paying enough attention to me to protect me with anything. The other thing is conflict from the standpoint of, hey, do I feel like this guy is a very aggressive type of guy that being with him is going to put me in a situation where I'm now between a rock and a hard place trying to minimize situations that could easily escalate because of how aggressive and how much conflict this guy attracts. I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean. To town with my girlfriend for this exact reason, or I would never do it really for this exact reason. Not anymore, at least. Tell me in the chat, do you ask yourself a very important question? Do you right now, as it stands, or ever in the past, been with a guy that you feel like when you and him go out, you're the one that has to take care of him? Tell me in the chat. The reason I ask this is because this can be something subtle that you don't realize is happening, but is very important to, in terms of answering your question, is he the one for you? Because this safety aspect, right? Even though going out on town is fun and it can be a good time for everyone to let loose and get things out of their system, at the end of the day, if you feel like that man's caretaker, it doesn't say a lot about your relationship and this guy being the one for you. Because you should not, feeling like someone's partner and feeling like you nurture him as a man and you nurture him in the relationship is very different from feeling like his caretaker. Okay? So if you go out with a man who likes to get really drunk to the point where he's stumbling all over the place or throwing up on himself, or he likes to get really high to the point where he can barely move, you're going to feel very unsafe with that man. Okay? And tragically enough, I have been a club promoter for many years in my past, and I've seen a lot. Okay? I've seen girls carrying their own man home after the club with vomit all over his shirt. He's stumbling all over the place, can't even walk. And she literally has his big body, like arm around her, and his big body, she's carrying him and helping him get into the Uber because of how belligerently drunk he is. I've seen it many times. Okay, it's very sad. But the reason I say that is that might be you, or that could end up being you if you're in a situation like this with a man who you just don't feel safe with because you don't even feel like he can take care of himself. Okay, I see a lot of you saying never. I would hope this never happens to you, but I see it happen. Okay, and this is the thing, right? In the opposite sense, when you feel safe with a man, obviously you feel protected. But also, something very important that I want to point out, you feel emotionally safe, right? So it's not just about going out with him and feeling like if there was a fight to happen that he could knock someone out. It's also about feeling emotionally safe from the standpoint of, oh, around him, I can be in my feminine state. I can relax my mind. Emotional safeness is also about feeling like, remember how I talked about your man planning the date and being able to handle the reservation and the timing and the everything? It's also about feeling like, oh, I'm safe to let my mind go. I'm safe to not be on edge about are things going to work out if I'm not the one doing all the planning, all the thinking, all the organizing. And it's not about saying that you're incapable of that. You will be capable of that. But what we also want to understand is if you don't feel relaxed enough in your relationship that you don't trust your man to be able to take care of certain things, then you're in the wrong relationship and you're with the wrong man. I don't know if any of you have ever seen any of these TikToks or Instagram reels where people will be talking about couples and this girl will be like, my brain, whenever I'm with my man, and it's just empty. She's just thinking about random things and like has no idea what's going on, right? Not because she's dumb, but because naturally, as a woman, when you feel emotionally safe around a man, you kind of shut your brain off because you don't really have to do so much critical thinking in order to exist around him. It's not that you're stupid, you just feel so safe that you don't feel it's necessary to be firing on all cylinders when you're with your man. Now, obviously, when your man's not there, you start to have to fire on all cylinders to exist. But naturally, when he's in your presence, you feel so safe and so protected that you don't have to worry about yourself. And you kind of exist more in a feminine state because your mind is so much more relaxed and less on guard. So if you end up in a situation or with a man where you feel this level of protection and you feel that level of safety, that is a good thing. If you feel yourself that your brain starts to shut off whenever you're around that man, from the standpoint of just feeling like, I know he's going to take care of it because I know he's smart, capable, intelligent, and has the critical thinking skills to figure it out. I'm not the one that needs to be doing that. That's not even my specialty or my role or my job. That is a good thing. And I want that for you. And I want a situation like that for you and a dynamic like that for you, because if you're in that dynamic, then that definitely means that he's the one for